My name is Camille Gomes. I am studying on the English language course at Federal University of Paraíba, and together with my friend Ana Beatriz, I will present their work on English in South America. I will start by talking a little about the country. It's a country located in the extreme South Africa, between an Atlantic and Indian Oceans. From the 17th century onwards, a white population of European origin, including the Dutch, English, French, and Germans, settled in the regions of South America. The descendants of colonizers formed a new peoples and a new native language, Afrikaans, a mixture of German, French, Portuguese, dialects, and Afrikaans language. With colonies from several European countries, South Africa was politically divided. In 1814, the Cape Colony was dominated by the British, and they implemented apartheid in the South Africa in 1848, segregating blacks and whites. During the period when apartheid was implemented, the population was forced to be educated in English or Afrikaans. Afrikaans language is spoken by at least 80% of the population were ignorant. In 1986, South America's next constituent gave official protection to all their country's main language. Nelson Mandela was a very important figure in the combat to racial discrimination in South America, and was one of the most important figures in the end of apartheid. South Africa currently has 11 official languages according to local website South Africa Gateway. 75 millions speak English in the country, another first or second language. In two of the provinces, English is a second as the most spoken English in Gauteng and KwaZulu.
So right now I'm going to be talking about South African English itself and how it is kind of divided in three types of English. That is Indian South African English, white South African English, and black South African English. So it really is diverse, a diverse English in South Africa. So if you think about it, how the diversity of English all over the world, and how just in South Africa there is these three types of English, it's really interesting to study about. And even though some people can see it as problematic to separate these types of English, I'm not going to get deep about it, discuss it, because I don't know much about it, so I can't give an opinion about it. And just to be clear, that I'm going to point out just some slight differences that I found in the internet while I was researching for this presentation. And yeah, not to be problematic or anything, I'm just going to point the differences, how diverse it is the English in South Africa. And still talking about South Africa in general, I'm going to read a quote said by Eric Armstrong, where he states that about South African English in general, that he feels like your mouth is more closed when you're talking, not when you're talking, when they talking. It feels like your mouth is more closed than other accents, especially Canadian speech. The resonance quality of it combines very dark, pulled back sounds in words like thought, lot, and poem, and very bright forest sounds in words like fleece, kit, dress, and trap. Also, in general, I still think, talking in general, South African English, it is rhotic. It has rhotic sounds, which means that all the R's in the words that on the spelling, they are pronounced very strongly. Just like British English, for example, the word very in British English and also South African English, is very, the R is heavily pronounced. Also, the trap bath split in South African English words, which means that the vowels and the words, they are pronounced as lower. Words like long, they are long. The tongue does the roll, it's long. So throughout the video you can see it, the South African English is really influenced by British English. There are some similarities, especially white South African English. I'm giving a spoiler already. And yes, the erotic, because the nadar very very strongly pronounced, and the trap back is plate. Sorry, trap back is plate, which means there's long. So now I'm going to the specific type of English, and starting with Indian South African English. I have to say that I didn't find much info about Indian South African English. Even though I tried, I didn't find so much. But what I did find was that the historical records points out that Indians didn't know how to talk any English when they first immigrated to South Africa, and they talked in English languages and Fanakalo when they wanted to talk among themselves. So they barely spoke any English, and it probably took them many years to talk English. But living in South Africa, and how English is one of the idioms, so they had to start talking English. And also it is point out some, I think it is our research, I can't remember right now, that pointed out the younger Indian South African English speakers, they still talk a lot like their parents and their grandparents, even though it is inappropriate to talk inappropriate to talk in that style, besides with their friends and relatives. And well, since I couldn't find many info about it, I'm just gonna give two examples of Indian South African English in this, because I have to write down, because it is also long. So the first one says, "Mother will say, what you all frightening like that mustn't fright," which means our mother used to say, "Why are you so afraid? You didn't need to be afraid." It was said by a 52-year-old female with 6 years of English education, and it was said in a informal interview. And the second one is A. How the time canoes are now coming, how more than with tomatoes and all. Which means, how about the time when we threw tomatoes on those approaching canoes? It was saying by a 22-year-old male with 12 years of English education in a conversation with friends in slang style. I'm now talking about White South African English. This term, White South African English, is applied to the first language varieties of English in South Africa. It is spoken by Zimbabweans and Namibian people. Namibian people. They are mostly descendants of the British, and they are considered the offshoots. There was a quote that I read in the researchers. I will let it like in the slides. It's gonna be I'll explain more. And it is divided in 3 classes. So there is difference in white. Even that there is the difference in English, South African English, and in white South African English there is this division. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, there are 3 groupings within white South African English. They are the upper class associated, it's called cultivated South African English. The middle class associated general form, and the working African associated broad. Even though I'm not focusing on all of them, how I say in the beginning, I'm just pointing and highlighting all of this because it's so extensive, it's so much, it's so rich, but I can only give some highlights of each group. And there is this class difference within the white South African English. And I'll also read some examples of how to identify white South African English, which is, I'll give 3 examples. The number of this whole thing is 3. So the first example is using myself or me-self instead of I in coordinate subjects. For example, my or me husband and myself were late. Also, second example, she or her used for inanimate reference, like she was burning good, referring to a house. So instead of using it, how American and British English, it is used she for everything. And third example is me instead of I in coordinate subjects, like me and my brother or my brother and me were late. So there's difference on the quotes. Now talking about Black South African English, it is used to reference to those that they talk in mother tongue African languages. And among Black South African English, there is this sort of division between, also just like white South African English, there is division in Black South African English. That is the high-end prestigious acrolect and the middle range mainstream mesolect. So even this is the really group inside the group. This is very, very, very diverse, very, very different. So besides that, there's also a difference between American English and Black South American English, which is the stress placement in some words. In Black South American English, this stress placement can be really changeable, and it can be seen in words like 70. That's the example I saw. 70 in American English, in Black South American English is 70. So the stress placement in this word is different from American English. Also, there is this difference in words that used in the diphthongs, they become monophthongs in that. So there's this comparison between white South African English and black South African English. For example, there's the example that I also saw, the word face. In general white South African English, it is face, face. And black South African English is face. It's short, it's shorter than the other one. Like goes to face, face to face. So it's really got shortening on it. So there's this slight differences between all of it. There's three kinds, and even though I couldn't find many info about it, you can see the differences, especially in the pronouns and dialects and everything. There is these small differences between them. So even with these changes, they are still South African English. So it is important to get to know more about it, to recognize the diversity, and it's highly important to just know that there is a difference. There is more than just American and British English. So on this part of the presentation, I researched some fun facts, which is some slangs on South Africa, South African English slangs to be more specific. So they are, how's it, which means how is it, Skinner is to gossip, and slap chips is some fried potato chips, and shame, which surprised me the most. Shame is sympathy and admiration. Sharp sharp is goodbye. I don't know why my accent became British out of nowhere. And I think this is it. Now I'm going to talk about differences between the American English and South African English. And to start with the comparison, I'm going to also read another quote by Eric Armstrong, where he says that compared to typical North American intonation patterns, South African English is more expressive, melodically, definitely with higher notes and possibly lower lows. This leads SAA to feel more expressive than typical North American. So he's really positive about South African English. It seems like it's his favorite one. And well, between that, the way they talk, there is also the fact that South African English is influenced by the indigenous Africa languages, and it is unique because of it. Just like Portuguese, that has the influences of African and indigenous languages. So there is the difference on Brazilian Portuguese and the Portuguese of Portugal. And this is also what happened to South African English. That besides having British influences, there is also the indigenous influences on South African English. So this is very unique. There is also the example, let's say, of the meaning of the word shame. Shame, just as I say, in South African English means sympathy and admiration, whereas in American English, shame is like an emotion, that comes from fear. This is a negative emotion. This has totally different meanings. And there is also, as I said before, the way words are pronounced, and the meaning, and the cultural background. There is this huge differences between them. Because of all these differences, we decided to make a South African playlist, like singers, South African singers, like say singing. I forgot the word. like South African singers singing in English, so we can hear more about their accents and get to know more South African Englishes, because it's important to diversify what we are listening to, because we listen to so much American songs that we felt like it was important to listen more South African songs, in English songs. And yeah, I'm gonna put the link on just alongside the whole video, so everyone who wants to listen to it can listen to it. And yes, that's it. It's an amazing playlist. It's all, even it really mixes like African languages with English, so it's very interesting to see if you are if you want to get to know more about South African English. This playlist might help you. Bye.
Preserving African language is essential to honor the continent's rich cultural diversity and to keep the history and identity of its peoples alive. Furthermore, having knowledge of another language, whether international or from a neighborhood country, promotes intercultural communication, facilitating collaboration and global development. Together, the preservation of African languages in the master other language promotes the appreciation of linguistic and cultural diversity and contributes to a more inclusive and connected world.